Working at Area 51 was routine until I was forced through a portal to another world DR. Sarah Chun had been working at Area 51 for 7 years, and honestly, most days were disappointingly ordinary. She spent her time analyzing mineral samples from crashed objects, writing reports that disappeared into classified filing cabinets, and drinking terrible coffee from the break room vending machine. The most exciting thing that usually happened was when someone forgot their security badge and set off the alarm system. Sarah specialized in xenomaterial analysis, which sounded much more thrilling than it actually was. Most of the samples she examined turned out to be regular earth metals that had been subjected to unusual atmospheric conditions. The government collected debris from every unexplained aircraft incident, hoping to find something genuinely extraterrestrial, but after years of testing, Sarah had concluded that if aliens were visiting Earth, they weren't leaving much evidence behind. Her laboratory occupied a corner of sub-level 3, surrounded by thick concrete walls and enough security cameras to film a movie. The lab contained standard equipment, electron microscopes, spectrometers, and computer terminals connected to databases she wasn't supposed to know existed. Sarah had grown comfortable with the routine of receiving sealed containers, analyzing their contents, and submitting reports that someone in Washington would probably never read on Tuesday morning. Everything changed. Sarah arrived at work to find her supervisor, Dr. Marcus Webb, waiting outside her lab with 2 men she didn't recognize. They wore expensive suits that looked out of place in the sterile government facility, and they carried briefcases that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly salary. "Dr. Chun," Webb said, his voice tighter than usual, "these gentlemen are from a special research division. They have a priority assignment for you." The taller man stepped forward and handed Sarah a security badge with a clearance level she had never seen before. "Dr. Chun, I'm Director Reynolds. We need your expertise for a project that requires immediate attention. Please gather your essential equipment and follow us." Sarah looked at Webb, hoping for some explanation, but he avoided eye contact. Something was definitely wrong. In 7 years at Area 51, she had never been pulled from her regular duties for emergency assignments. The facility operated on schedules and protocols that were planned months in advance. "What kind of project?" Sarah asked, clipping the new badge to her lab coat. "That information is compartmentalized," Reynolds replied. "You'll receive a full briefing once we reach the secure location." Sarah packed her portable analysis kit, wondering what could be so urgent that it required disrupting established procedures. She followed the men through corridors she had never seen, past security checkpoints that required the special badge Reynolds had given her. They descended deeper into the facility than Sarah knew was possible, through levels that didn't appear on any map she had studied during orientation. The elevator stopped at sub-level 8. And when the doors opened, Sarah stepped into a world she didn't know existed. The corridor ahead was wider than those on the upper levels, with walls made of some dark material that seemed to absorb light. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows that moved independently of any visible source. "This section of the facility was constructed in 1987, Reynolds explained as they walked. "It houses projects that require enhanced containment measures." They passed laboratories behind reinforced windows, where Sarah glimpsed equipment she couldn't identify and experiments she couldn't understand. In one room, scientists in full environmental suits worked around a device that pulsed with blue energy. In another, a team studied what appeared to be a perfectly spherical object floating 3 feet above a metal table. "How long has this been operating?" Sarah asked, amazed that such extensive facilities existed beneath her workplace. "Some projects have been running for decades," the second man replied. "Others began last week. Time moves differently down here." They stopped at a laboratory marked with biohazard warnings and radiation symbols Sarah didn't recognize. Reynolds pressed his palm against a scanner, and the heavy door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Inside, Sarah saw the most extraordinary thing in her professional career. The object dominated the center of the room, standing 12 feet tall and 8 feet wide. It appeared to be constructed from the same dark material as the corridor walls, but its surface was covered with patterns that hurt to look at directly. The patterns seemed to shift and change when Sarah wasn't focusing on them, creating geometric shapes that shouldn't have been possible in three-dimensional space. "What is it?" Sarah whispered, approaching the object with scientific curiosity overriding her caution. "We call it the Gateway," Reynolds said. "It was recovered from a crash site in Nevada 3 months ago. Every analysis we've attempted has failed to determine its composition or purpose." Sarah walked around the object, noting that it had no obvious controls or interfaces. The patterns on its surface continued their hypnotic movement, occasionally forming symbols that resembled mathematical equations she almost but not quite recognized. "Where do you think it came from?" she asked, taking readings with her portable spectrometer. "Unknown," Reynolds replied. "But yesterday something changed." As if responding to his words, the gateway began to emit a low humming sound that seemed to come from inside Sarah's bones rather than her ears. The patterns on its surface brightened, and the air in the laboratory began to shimmer like heat waves rising from hot pavement. "It's been doing that for 18 hours, Reynolds explained. "Our instruments detect massive energy fluctuations, but we can't determine what's causing them or how to stop them." Sarah approached closer, fascinated by readings that defied every principle of physics she understood. Her spectrometer detected elements that weren't on the periodic table, energy signatures that shouldn't have been possible, and gravitational anomalies that made her question whether she was still on Earth. "Have you tried communicating with it?" Sarah asked, noting that the patterns seemed to respond to her presence. "Communication implies intelligence," the second man said. "We're not prepared to make that assumption." But Sarah was already making connections that her colleagues had missed. The mathematical symbols appearing in the patterns weren't random. They followed sequences that suggested purpose and design. The energy fluctuations correlated with her movements around the object, as if it was somehow aware of her presence. "I think it's trying to activate," Sarah said. Stepping back as the humming grew louder, the gateway's patterns suddenly blazed with brilliant light that filled the laboratory. Sarah felt a sensation like static electricity crawling across her skin, and her instruments began registering readings that exceeded their measurement capabilities. The air in front of the gateway began to distort, creating a circular area where space itself seemed to bend and twist. "Everyone out!" Reynolds shouted, but Sarah was transfixed by what she was witnessing. Through the distortion, she caught glimpses of somewhere else. The view flickered like a bad television signal, showing landscapes that couldn't exist on Earth. She saw purple skies, floating mountains, and structures that seemed to grow rather than be built. In the distance, creatures moved with grace and purpose that suggested intelligence far beyond human understanding. "It's a portal," Sarah breathed, understanding flooding through her mind. "It's showing us another world." The gateway's activity intensified, and the portal expanded until it was large enough for a person to walk through. Sarah could smell alien air and hear sounds that no Earth instrument had ever recorded. The other world was real, and it was calling to her. But as she stepped closer to investigate, Sarah heard footsteps behind her. Reynolds and his companion had returned with security personnel carrying weapons she didn't recognize. Their expressions suggested that her scientific curiosity had become a security concern. "Dr. Chun," Reynolds said carefully, "please step away from the device." Sarah realized that she had become part of an experiment she didn't understand, in a facility that operated by rules she had never learned. The gateway continued to pulse with energy, the portal showing tantalizing glimpses of a world that could revolutionize human understanding of the universe. And Sarah Chun, who had spent 7 years analyzing ordinary debris in a routine government job, found herself standing at the threshold of the greatest discovery in human history. With no idea whether she would be allowed to study it or whether she would become another classified secret buried in the depths of Area 51, the portal shimmered, waiting. The other world beckoned, and Sarah had to decide whether to follow her scientific instincts or her survival instincts, knowing that either choice would change her life forever. "Working at Area 51 was routine until I was forced," Through a portal to another world, the security team's weapons weren't pointed at the gateway. They were pointed at Sarah. "Dr. Chen," Reynolds repeated, his voice taking on an edge that made Sarah's stomach clench. "Please step away from the device immediately." Sarah looked at the portal, then at the armed men behind her. The other world was so close she could feel its alien atmosphere on her face, carrying scents of flowers that had never grown on Earth and the ozone smell of technology beyond human understanding. "You're not going to shut it down," Sarah said, suddenly understanding. "You're going to send someone through." "That decision is above your security clearance," the second man replied. "Your role is to analyze the device's properties and submit a technical report." But Sarah had spent 7 years watching Area 51 operations, and she recognized the pattern. When the government found something truly extraordinary, they didn't study it carefully in controlled conditions. They threw resources at it until they got results, regardless of safety protocols or scientific methodology. "You're going to send a team through without understanding what's on the other side," Sarah said, backing toward the portal as the security personnel advanced. "You could be starting an interplanetary war." "Dr. Chun," Reynolds warned, "return to the designated safe area." Through the portal, Sarah glimpsed movement in the alien landscape. Tall figures approached from the distance, their forms obscured by the shimmering distortion of the gateway. They moved with purpose, as if they had detected the portal's activation and were coming to investigate. "There's someone coming," Sarah called out, pointing toward the other world. "We need to establish peaceful contact protocols before." Her words were cut off as one of the security personnel fired some kind of energy weapon. Sarah felt a numbing sensation spread through her left shoulder, and she stumbled backward toward the portal. The alien figures on the other side had stopped moving, as if they sensed the hostility of the humans observing them. "Non-lethal suppression only," Reynolds ordered. "We need her conscious for debriefing." Sarah realized with growing horror that she had become a test subject. They weren't planning to send trained diplomats or scientists through the portal. They were planning to push her through and see what happened. If she survived and made peaceful contact, they would send a larger team. If she died or disappeared, they would try a different approach. The numbing effect of the weapon was spreading through her body, but Sarah's mind remained clear. She had perhaps 30 seconds before paralysis set in completely. Through the portal, the alien figures had resumed their approach, and Sarah could see that they carried objects that might have been tools or weapons. "Please," Sarah said, addressing the aliens even though she knew they couldn't understand her. "We're not hostile. This is just a misunderstanding." But the security team fired again, and this time the energy beam struck Sarah in the chest. She felt her legs give out, and she fell backward through the portal into the alien world. The transition was like being struck by lightning made of ice. Every nerve in Sarah's body fired simultaneously as she passed through the dimensional barrier, and she landed hard on ground that felt wrong beneath her hands. The gravity was lighter than Earth's, and the air tasted of copper and ozone behind her. The portal snapped shut. Sarah found herself alone on an alien world, paralyzed by weapons fire, with no way to return home. The landscape around her was even more extraordinary than it had appeared through the portal. Purple vegetation covered rolling hills that extended to a horizon dominated by 3 small suns. Crystalline structures grew from the ground like trees, chiming softly in the alien breeze. The figures she had seen through the portal were approaching, and Sarah could see them clearly now. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, with elongated limbs and faces that were almost human but subtly wrong in ways that made Sarah's brain struggle to process their appearance. Their skin had a metallic sheen that shifted color as they moved, and their large eyes reflected the light of the 3 suns. Sarah tried to speak, but found that the paralysis weapon had affected her vocal cords. She could only lie motionless as the aliens surrounded her, speaking in a language that sounded like music played on instruments. Made of crystal, one of the aliens knelt beside Sarah and extended a hand toward her face. Its touch was surprisingly warm, and Sarah felt a tingling sensation as some kind of energy passed between them. Suddenly, she could understand what they were saying. The visitor is injured, the alien said, its voice seeming to speak directly into Sarah's mind. The passage through the gateway has caused neural disruption. Can she be healed? Another alien asked. The damage is artificial, the first alien replied, its hands moving over Sarah's body without quite touching her. She was attacked before coming through. Why would her own kind harm her? Sarah tried to explain, but her vocal cords still wouldn't respond. The alien seemed to sense her frustration and placed its hand on her forehead again. This time, Sarah felt a warm sensation flowing through her nervous system, counteracting the effects of the paralysis weapon. Slowly, the alien cautioned as Sarah began to regain control of her muscles. The healing process must not be rushed. Sarah managed to sit up, marveling at the alien's advanced understanding of human physiology. They had diagnosed and treated injuries caused by technology they had never seen before, using methods that seemed to operate on pure intuition. Thank you, Sarah said, her voice returning gradually. I'm sorry for the intrusion. My people? They don't understand what this means. The aliens exchanged glances, and Sarah sensed complex emotions passing between them. Fear, curiosity, and something that might have been sadness. We know of your people, the first alien said. We have been watching your world for many cycles, waiting for you to develop sufficient wisdom to join the greater community. The gateway was a test. Sarah felt her heart sink. A test we failed. Not failed, the alien corrected. Incomplete. Your leaders respond to discovery with violence and suspicion. But you... It studied Sarah with those large, reflective eyes. You sought understanding rather than control. What happens now? Sarah asked, looking around at the impossible beauty of the alien world. They won't let me return with this knowledge. The choice is yours, the alien said. We can return you to your world, but you will carry the memory of this place forever. Or you can remain and learn what your species might become when it abandons fear. Sarah considered her options. Return to Area 51, where she would be debriefed, sworn to secrecy, and probably assigned to some mundane project far from anything significant. Or stay in a world where beings had evolved beyond the need for weapons, where technology served wisdom rather than controlling it. If I stay, Sarah asked, can I help my people understand? Can I prepare them for eventual contact? That would be the purpose, the alien replied. To become a bridge between worlds. But the path is long, and you may never see your home again in the form you remember. Through the crystalline structures around them, Sarah could see other beings moving in the distance. Some appeared to be different species entirely, suggesting that this world hosted representatives from multiple civilizations. The idea of a galactic community, with Earth as a potential member, was both thrilling and terrifying. What about the people who sent me here? Sarah asked. Will they try to force the portal open again? The gateway responds only to readiness, the alien explained. Your leaders tried to control it through force, which caused it to close permanently on their side. It will not open again until your species demonstrates wisdom? Sarah realized that her forced passage through the portal had been both a rescue and a revelation. The aliens hadn't just saved her from becoming a government test subject. They had shown her a glimpse of humanity's potential future. I'll stay, Sarah decided. But I want to learn everything. Science, philosophy, technology, culture. If I'm going to be humanity's representative, I need to understand what we're being offered. The alien smiled, expressions of joy that transcended species boundaries. Then your real education begins now, the first alien said. Welcome to the Confederation of Worlds, Sarah Chun of Earth. You are the first of your kind to join us willingly. As they led her toward the crystalline structures, Sarah wondered whether Area 51 would classify her as missing or dead. Either way, she had become something unprecedented, a human being with access to knowledge that could transform civilization. If she could ever find a way to share it, the three suns continued their dance across the purple sky, and Sarah Chun began the most important scientific research of her career, studying not just alien technology, but the possibility that humanity might someday be ready to use it wisely. Working at Area 51 was routine until I was forced through a portal to another world. 3 months had passed since Sarah Chun stepped through the portal, though time moved differently on Zarian as the aliens called their world. The planet rotated around 3 small suns in a complex orbital pattern that created 30-hour days and seasons that lasted weeks rather than months. Sarah had learned that her rescuer was named Kethver, a title that roughly translated to Seeker of Hidden Truths. Kethver belonged to the Zephyrians, one of 47 species that comprised the Confederation of Worlds. Each species had contributed knowledge and perspective to create a civilization that had eliminated warfare, poverty, and environmental destruction across thousands of planets. The crystalline structures Sarah had first seen were actually living buildings, grown from seeds that responded to the inhabitants' needs. Her residence had shaped itself to accommodate human physiology, providing the proper atmospheric mix and gravitational adjustment while maintaining the aesthetic beauty that Zephyrians considered essential for mental health. Every day brought new revelations about technology that seemed like magic to human understanding. Transportation occurred through quantum tunnels that folded space, allowing instant travel between planets. Medicine operated at the cellular level, preventing aging and disease while enhancing natural abilities. Energy came from controlled harvesting of stellar radiation, providing unlimited, clean power without environmental impact. But the most remarkable discovery was that all of this technology was secondary to the philosophical advancement that made it possible. The Confederation species had learned to prioritize collective well-being over individual dominance, cooperation over competition, and wisdom over mere intelligence. Your species shows great potential, Kethver explained during one of their daily education sessions. Humans possess remarkable adaptability and creative problem-solving abilities, but you are trapped in evolutionary patterns that served your ancestors' survival needs. Sarah sat in her study, surrounded by holographic displays showing Earth's current status. Confederation monitoring stations tracked human activities across the planet, analyzing social progress and technological development. The data was both encouraging and disturbing. "We've made significant advances in the last century," Sarah pointed out, watching footage of international cooperation on climate change initiatives. "Yes," Kethver agreed. "But observe the pattern. Every step forward is followed by 2 steps backward. Your species creates solutions, then refuses to implement them due to political and economic conflicts." The displays showed familiar scenes: breakthrough medical treatments that remained expensive and inaccessible, renewable energy technologies suppressed by fossil fuel industries, and scientific discoveries classified by governments for military applications. Sarah recognized her own former workplace in footage of Area 51, where researchers continued analyzing alien artifacts while missing their true significance. What would it take for Earth to qualify for Confederation membership? Sarah asked, though she suspected she wouldn't like the answer. Unified planetary governance, elimination of resource-based warfare, and demonstration of peaceful intentions toward other species, Kethver replied. "Most importantly, your people must choose wisdom over power." Sarah laughed bitterly. "That could take centuries. Or it could take a single generation. If the right catalyst appears." Kethver activated a new display showing Sarah's former colleagues at Area 51. Dr. Webb looked haggard and tired, working late hours in the laboratory where Sarah had once analyzed routine samples. Director Reynolds appeared in security footage, arguing with superiors about budget allocations for projects that had yielded no useful results. "They believe you are dead," Kethver observed. "Your government has classified your disappearance as a test subject fatality." Sarah felt a pang of sadness for Webb, who had been a good supervisor and probably blamed himself for her fate. But she also felt anger at the system that had treated her as expendable. "Show me Earth's current technological capabilities," Sarah requested. The displays shifted to show human achievements in space exploration, quantum computing, and genetic engineering. Humanity was tantalizingly close to breakthrough technologies that could solve many planetary problems, but progress was fragmented across competing nations and corporations. We could help them, Sarah said. The Confederation could share knowledge that would advance Earth by centuries. That assistance has been offered before, Kethfer replied sadly. 3 times in your planet's history, Confederation ambassadors have made contact with human leaders. Each time, the knowledge was weaponized and used for conquest rather than advancement. Sarah studied the historical records, seeing evidence of advanced technology in ancient civilizations that had subsequently disappeared. Atlantis, Lemuria, and other lost cultures had apparently been early attempts at human Confederation cooperation, ended by humanity's inability to use advanced knowledge responsibly. But what if the contact came from below instead of above? Sarah asked, a plan beginning to form in her mind. What if someone who understood both cultures could gradually prepare Earth for eventual membership? Kethfer's expressions suggested intrigue. Explain your thinking. Sarah stood and began pacing, excitement building as she outlined her idea. Instead of grand diplomatic gestures that threaten existing power structures, what if we planted seeds of wisdom that could grow naturally? Small technological hints, philosophical concepts, and ethical frameworks that humans could discover and develop themselves? You propose becoming a secret agent of advancement, Kethfer said. But how would you return to Earth without revealing Confederation existence? Sarah smiled, remembering her years of analyzing supposedly alien debris at Area 51, by becoming exactly what they expect to find. A crashed alien spacecraft with one survivor who doesn't remember much about her origin. Kethfer consulted with other Confederation members, and within hours Sarah found herself in a laboratory where Zephyrian biotechnology could modify her appearance and implant false memories that would withstand human interrogation techniques. The process would allow her to retain her essential knowledge, while creating a cover story that would satisfy government investigators. The modifications cannot be reversed, Kethfer warned. Once you return to Earth, you will appear to be a human-alien hybrid with limited memories of advanced civilization. You will have to rediscover Confederation knowledge gradually, as if learning it for the first time. But I'll retain enough understanding to guide humanity in the right direction. You will know what questions to ask and what discoveries to pursue. But the answers must come through legitimate human research, or your people will reject them as alien influence. Sarah nodded, understanding the elegant subtlety of the plan. By becoming a living bridge between worlds, she could help humanity develop the wisdom necessary for peaceful contact. While giving them credit for their own advancement, the biotechnology laboratory was unlike anything on Earth, using living systems to modify cellular structure with precision impossible through mechanical means. Sarah felt no pain as Zephyrian organisms restructured her DNA to include beneficial adaptations while maintaining her essential humanity when the process was complete. Sarah looked at herself in a crystalline mirror and saw someone who was recognizably human but subtly different. Her eyes held flecks of metallic color that seemed to shift in different lighting, and her skin had a faint luminescence that could be mistaken for exceptional health. How long before the gateway reopens for my return? Sarah asked. 3 days, Kethfer replied. We have prepared a spacecraft that will crash convincingly near your former workplace. You will be found injured but alive, with no clear memory of how you survived or where you have been. Sarah spent those final days memorizing everything she could about Confederation, philosophy, and technology, knowing that her conscious mind would retain only fragments after the memory modification. But those fragments would be enough to point human research in revolutionary directions on her last morning on Zarian. Sarah stood on a hillside overlooking the crystalline city where she had learned that civilization could transcend competition and conflict. Somewhere among those structures, representatives from dozens of worlds worked together to solve problems that affected entire galaxies. Will I remember this? Sarah asked Kethfer, who had come to see her off. Not directly, Kethfer replied, but you will carry the knowledge in your heart. When humans are ready for the truth, you will remember everything. The spacecraft that would carry Sarah home was beautiful in its simplicity, designed to appear advanced but comprehensible to human investigators. It would provide just enough evidence of superior technology to inspire further research, while raising questions that could only be answered through the kind of ethical and scientific development the Confederation required. As Sarah settled into the pilot's seat, she felt both sadness and excitement about returning to Earth. She was no longer the routine government scientist who had analyzed alien debris in a basement laboratory. She was humanity's first representative to the galactic community, carrying within her the seeds of a transformation that could elevate her entire species. Mzirians